Okay, let me show you what the Bend Deformer has to offer. So if you want to have some information about this particular deformer or another one, don't forget that you can always hold down the Option key on your keyboard while clicking the button, and it will show you this cool pop-up which is a brief summary of what it does. So the Bend Deformer is aims at bending, as its name says, the selected layers as a bow shape. If you move it by keyframing the transform position property along its X or its Y axis. It could be another layer. You'll find it, you'll see it a bit later. So let me show you how it works. So I will create a basic composition. I will create a solid like this. Okay, so I will first keyframe this layer really basically, like this, for instance. So I will create a bunch of keyframes like this, like this, like this, and like this. Okay, for the moment, as you can see, it's a really basic motion, okay, without even any easy ease. So I will just easy ease it for a more natural motion. So right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Let's change the velocity by clicking on it. Let's add a influence of 70, for instance, and now I have this, which is rather good, but not that interesting. So now that I have a layer, that is called Red Solid 2, I will rename it my square, for instance, and I will click on it to select it. And since it has some keyframes on its position property, let's see what happens when I click on the Bend Deformer. As you can see, anything has changed if I do not play the preview, but a new layer has been created with the same name, my square, followed by Spring Constraint Control, which is exactly what happened before with the parent constraint. But now, if you take a look closely at what you have as controls in this layer, you still have the Spring Constraint Control with the Spring Physical Attributes, which are the elasticity, damping, time offset, as seen on the parent constraint previously, and it will inherit the motion from itself. Since I've chosen only one layer, it's my square, and so now I don't need this. I want to show you what the Bend X max and the Bend Y max are. Just before showing it, just make a quick run preview. Okay, cool. As you can see, it has automatically created a nice bow shape on each position movement, okay, which is really nice, really cool in various cases. So it makes your layer act like a jiggling one or a soft one, and your solid doesn't seem to be stiff like before. So it's really cool. You have a nice secondary motion, a nice cartoonish look to it, which is pretty cool with just one click. Don't forget that you can always click on your spring constraint control and tweak the spring physical attributes like this, for instance, to make the effects even more visible like this, or less visible by decreasing the elasticity, for instance, and increasing the damping option. You can offset a bit the time offset like this to have a nice anticipation movement. And now you have something that is much more stiff. Okay, so with more subtle values like 7 and 3, for instance, and time offset like this, okay, you can really tweak your springiness to have exactly what you want. So this is basically it. It's really simple to apply. Okay, now what does the Bend X max settings and what does the Bend Y max setting? So these are basically some sliders that you can find in the FX expression controls, slider controls that has been created with the name Bend, since I've created a Bend Deformer, on the X axis and on the Y axis. And if you take closely a look at my initial square layer, now you have always the Springy Deformers control that I told you to do not remove previously, so I won't talk that much about it for now. But you have also some Bend X and Bend Y deformers, which, to be honest, are just some effects, distort, warp effects. These are just warp effects that have been renamed Bend X for the X axis, Bend Y for the Y axis, which are already set up for you on the vertical and horizontal way with some cool expression that react to the difference between the parent constraint that you haven't applied so it's a difference between the resulting transform properties, which are there, okay, and the bend warp effect will vary its intensity between the distance of this springy position here, that is calculated like the parent constraint, and the position from the my square layer itself. So as soon as this point will go at the exact same position as the initial layer, the intensity will reduce, so it will end up with this nice springy motion. So it's basically it, and all the other buttons work the same way. So all you have to do is, since you know now that it's just a bend X with an arc on vertical and a bend Y with an arc warp on horizontal, you don't need to go here. You just need to know that they were there, but you don't need to tweak them at all. All you have to do is to go through my square spring constraint control, and you can play with the bend X max and bend Y max if you want to add more a bow shape here. So for instance, during the motion onto the X axis, you can exaggerate the bending effect by increasing the slider bend X max. As you can see, as soon as I do so, it will bend at the maximum value until you have an exact half of a circle, which is pretty cool. So if you do a RAM preview of this, you have now that. Which means that you have the full control about the axis you are working on. So if you want an exaggerate effect only on the x-axis. And if you do not want any bending effect on the y, you can simply go to the bend y and make it 0. So now it will only bend on this dimension. So you have the full control onto each axis. If you want to exaggerate conversely the y bend effect, you can increase it and decrease the x max if you want to. So when it moves horizontally, it won't be that much visible, but when it will move vertically, it will be way more visible with such values. By default, the values are 100 and 100 on both axes. So pretty cool, pretty nice to understand. It will add automatically a cool cartoonish motion to any layer. But be really careful. So this will work, and it's true for all the other deformers except the custom effect. It will only work with pixelated layers, meaning that if you try to apply this Bend Deformer or a Shear Deformer or any of these other deformers here on a shape layer or a text layer, it won't work as designed for. So be careful with it. If you want to make your shape layers or text layers or vector illustrator layers bend or shear or squash and stretch or jiggle or bulge or twist or liquid, you have to pre-comp them and make sure that your bounding box of the pre-comp are fitting the exact size of your design. So it's really important to know and to keep in mind to help you use my toolset correctly. So this is it, pretty much it for the Bend Deformer. Pretty easy to apply. Just keep in mind that a Bend Deformer, if I press Alt, okay, it will display a summary of what it does. You just have to keyframe the position only on the X, on the X, sorry, or on the Y axis, or on both axes, but you won't be able to bend anything by animating the rotation of the scale of your layer. A last thing to keep in mind is, since you have the possibility to inherit the motion from any layer, you are not bound to make your layer bend according to the motion of itself. You can, for instance, create another solid, for instance, this one. I will make it greenish like this. Okay, and now if I sorry, I will remove all the properties so I can show you how to remove properly my effect once applied. So I will remove it entirely from my square, the red one. So to do so, you can't just remove this first. You just have to go to the layer itself, remove, delete all the effects like this with the delete K on the keyboard, and now you can delete entirely the spring constraint control layer. So now you have just a red layer that is animated on its position. You can create with the bluish greenish solid. You can click on Bend Deformer. As you can see, now I've created some Bend X and Bend Y warp effects on the turquoise solid one layer, and a new layer has been created as well which is called turquoise solid 1 spring constraint control, like always. So now, since my turquoise solid 1 layer here doesn't move at all, it hasn't any keyframe on its position, I can make it bend based on my square motion. To do so, just go to the spring constraint control, and in the spring constraint control pseudo effect, just choose in the inherit motion from drop down list, just choose the my square layer, which is the one that has the keyframes on its position. So if I do so, let's see what happens. Okay, pretty cool. As you can see, my layer is now bending according to the motion applied to another layer, which could be really useful in various cases. So hope it makes sense. Keep in mind that what I've just done now is just select another layer than the initial one in the inherit motion from drop-down list. So what I've shown you by now can be applied to all the other buttons. So it's the same for the Shear Deformer, the Squash and Stretch Deformer, the Jiggle Deformer, the Bulge Deformer, the Twist Deformer, the Liquid Deformer, and the Custom Effect Deformer. And so as you can see, the solid is bending with how can I say this? He's bending around its center here. So you will end up with a kind of bow shape, which is really nice for some kind of effects. But if you want to give the impression of a design that is sliding onto a surface like the ground, you can design your graphics element, in a special way, like in my Photoshop document like this. So since I will bend my graphics around the center, you can, for instance, create a design in Photoshop or in After Effects if you want to, which is just here in After Effects a simple letter with some effects drawn directly onto it, and I will place it just at the center. So the bottom of my graphic is just on the center, exactly on my document, and I've created a copy of my design with a symmetry and with a blurry effect here to give the impression that it's a reflection of this one. So now I will import that in After Effects and show you what you can end up with. So I will import this. Okay, it's called S-band. It's a footage. I will leave it as it is. I will create a footage only. I don't want the layers at all. I just want this to be considered as a simple image with the correct dimensions. I will delete all this. I will now place my S-band PSD footage right here in my composition, and I will resize it a bit. Okay. I will just now click on the stopwatch position and make this. As you can see, my animation will just be a simple arriving of my S shape. It's a bit fast, so I will make it a bit slower. I will just make it ease and ease. Okay, and what I've now is just let's add a little bit more easy ease on the out. So what I have now, if I select my layer and if I click on the bend, sorry, I will re-display the name, it's more convenient if you want to learn my tool. So I will click on my S-bend, click on the Bend Deformer, and now let's see what happens. Okay, pretty cool. As you can see, it bent my layer in a nice cartoonish motion. If you want to exaggerate it, you can, shown you this just before, just delete the easing to make it more visible. I will click on the Spring Constraint control, exaggerate a bit the slider of the bend X max, like this, for instance, and I will make it a little bit more springy by increasing the elasticity a bit and decreasing the damping, for instance, so something like this. And I will delay a bit my animation by increasing a bit my time offset. So something like this. Okay, let's see what I end up with. Okay, I have too much delayed with the time offset. I will return to a value of 0. Okay, I will easy ease it again. Okay, let's exaggerate a bit the easing and let's see what happens. Okay, cool. It's a really nice kind of animation, so I really love that that effect. It works pretty well. The only thing that I don't love that much is the way that the bottom of your letter should stay in place on the surface of your ground and not sliding from left to right like this. But this is due to the bow shape of the Bend Deformer. So to do this kind of thing, what I prefer to use is the Shear Deformer, which is the second deformer available in my toolset. And I will now show you how the Shear Deformer works. So to demonstrate it, I will recreate a new composition. We'll create a new solid. Okay, with a simple solid. I will place it right here, for instance. I will keyframe its position like this and make it slide. Can slide is here on the composition, on the bottom of my composition. So if I easy ease this animation, and if I make a quick preview of my animation, I have something like this, which really isn't that interesting. But as soon as I select this solid, I will name it sliding box, for instance. Okay, as soon as I select this layer, since it moves along its x-axis, I can now use the Shear Deformer. If I option click on this Shear Deformer, it will explain what it does. It will slant in a subtle S shape, which is shown here in the icon, without touching the base, which is perfect to give the impression that the bottom base of your layer or your design is sticky to the ground. So you can do this on the bottom of your layer or on the right side of your layer. Left and top can't be achieved with this shear deformer, since it uses a warp effect that doesn't handle the left and top sides. So I will click OK, I will select my sliding box and click Shear Deformer. As you can see, if I make a quick preview, I have now this, which is really cool. As you can see, I have now the impression that my layer moves by this center of mass and it sticks to the bottom side. So it doesn't have anything to do with the anchor point, so you can place it anywhere you want, and it doesn't have anything to deal with the bottom of your composition or the weight of your composition. It's just due to the bounding box of your design. Keep in mind again that shape layers and text layers won't work with this kind of deformers. You will have to pre-comp them and make the comp size fit to the graphic bounding box. So it's pretty cool. As I said just before, it will work too if I do an animation like this. So I will make something like this, which is pretty cool if you want to give the impression of, for instance, a flag that is rising up from the ground to the top. As explained before with the Bend Deformer, don't forget that you can always inherit the motion from another layer than the initial one. So if I have, let's say for instance, I will create really quickly a simple base like this to make a kind of, so it's a little bit small, so let's make it bigger. Okay, so it is my my base. Okay, I will play with the anchor point, or I will just place my base here. Okay, so I will make the sliding box not moving, just like this, and I will make it a child of the dark orange solid. So now I will animate my solid. So imagine that it's not a solid, but I could pre-comp the sliding box, for instance, and make it okay, I'm French, so I will make it a Frenchy kind of flag, for instance, like this. Of course, be free to use your own flag if you want to reproduce this tutorial. So pretty cool. I can go to the composition setting, make it a little bit smaller on its height, like this. So sorry. Okay, pretty nice. So if I go here and if I place its anchor point here, I will place it exactly at the top of my flag base, like this. Since my sliding box, which I can rename flag, as you can see, the sliding box here can't be in sync with the name here, but it doesn't matter in this example. I will make now the spring constraint control depending, so inheriting its motion from not the flag, but the dark orange solid. And now I will animate the dark orange solid, which is my flag base, like this. So if I do this, you can already see what happens to the flag. Okay, pretty cool, pretty nice. It's really useful in really a lot of situations. So keep in mind that it can't be achieved in the left corner, but you could simply make a flip of the scale like this, for instance. Okay, and it will now work on the left side. Just adapt your design to be able to have the correct design with a symmetry like this. So now it works on both sides. So it's pretty cool. Don't forget neither that you can always play with the spring physical attributes and make it more damping, more dragging, make less elasticity, and now you have something like this. You could animate your flag with some other effects on top of the shear X and shear Y effects, like this, for instance, and make it, for instance, wave warp, for instance. Okay, pretty cool. And make your composition bigger, like this. Okay, to enable the sinusoid effect to behave as it's needed. Okay, pretty cool. So all you have to do is to play with the option to have what you want to. Okay, so don't forget that all you deform, all you apply as deformers, distorters, will be directly on the initially selected layer, which is my flag in my case. So you will retrieve your effects here, axis by axis, and the expression is driven by the spring constraint control, which are there, shear X max and shear. So since the motion is just on the vertical, it won't change anything if I play with a shear X max here. But if I want to, I can play with a shear Y max, since it's a vertical motion. And now if I want to exaggerate the motion, I can by increasing this motion. And now I have this. Okay, so pretty cool. I will add a little bit more. Okay, less elasticity, a little bit less damping too. I didn't tell you before, but the damping cannot be less than 0, and the maximum value for the damping is 10, just like the elasticity. For the time offset, it will go to -1 to 1 maximum value. So this is it for the shear deformer. Let me show you another last concrete cases with the shear deformer, with this nice picture of a slug. As you can see, it's already pre-keyed in Photoshop, so I've already the alpha channel that is correct. I have placed the bottom base of the slug at the bottom of my footage in Photoshop, so I can now go to this composition, make it HD ready, make something like this. Okay, and I can now make something like this, for instance. Let's give me a second to make a little animation, little but efficient one, something like this. Okay, something like this, really simply. Okay, I will easy ease all my keyframes. And now I will click on my slug PSD footage and click simply on my Shear Deformer, which is this one. Okay, now let's check what happens. Okay, pretty cool, pretty nice. This is exactly the motion you have seen in my trailer at a moment with the slug. I just added a reflection, duplicated it, make a symmetry on its y-axis, just like this. Okay, play with the anchor point like this, and you can play with blur and sharpen. Just make a quick blur with a Gaussian blur for the purpose of the tutorial, and both layers will depend on the same spring constraint, since I have duplicated it from this one. So now I can play with the elasticity. It's a bit strong, so I will reduce the shear X max effect a bit, something like this. I will make it a little bit more nervous, so I will decrease the damping and make it more stiff, so less elasticity. So something like this. And now, if I press play, I have this cool motion. Okay, pretty nice. So a little bit fast, so I will make some room in my keyframes here. A little bit slower. And you have exactly the same that I've created and shown in my trailer. So pretty cool too, and useful for various situations. So this is it for the Shear Deformer. Let's go ahead and play with the Squash and Stretch Deformer. To demonstrate it, I will recreate again a new composition, a new solid. I will make it a square one. I will use a little bit smaller size like this, and as usual I will play with its position. So keep in mind that the icons should talk to by themselves. If you analyze the icon of each of my tools, you can see then the the white 4 arrows here are the same than the position tool. Here you have a scaling tool, and here you have a rotation tool. So keep in mind that the bend, the shear, the squash and stretch, and the jiggle deformer and the liquid deformer here all are based on position only, while the bulge deformer is based on the scale and the twist deformer is based on the rotation, as you see in the icon here. So let's create a quick motion on my solid. So I've told you it's just based on the position, so I will just create something like this. Again, this is exactly the same motion I've applied to, so I could have reused the same line before. Okay, keep in mind that the solid could be anything that you want in terms of graphics, but keep in mind that shape layers and text layers aren't handled by this toolset. You have to pre-comb them and to make your pre-comb size fit your design. So, okay, so I have a really basic motion by now. Something like this. I will create an easy ease on my motion, and let's take a look at what it does basically without my script. Okay, really boring. And now select your red solid and click simply on the squash and stretch, which is really well known, one of the principles of animations created initially by Walt Disney. Okay, so now that my, as you can see, my layer has now a lot of expressions on it and a bunch of effects that have been created on it. It's always my Springy Deformers control that you don't have, you shouldn't remove in any case. I've already told you this, and I've created by clicking this button automatically a squash and stretch scale on X, on Y, a bulge effect on X, and a bulge effect on Y. All this is just some simple effects native from After Effects. Here for the scale, it's just the effect, distort, transform effect. And for the bulge, it's just the same distort, warp effect that has been set it up through squeeze here for X on horizontal and for the Y. So all this is already set up for you. You don't have to go here. All you have to do to customize it. So before that, let's see what happens now with the preview. Okay, cool. As you can see, you have now a really cartoonish look on your moving red solid, which is really nice. To make it a little bit more stiff and less elastic, you could customize it a bit more. So you can go to the Spring Constraint control as usual and play with the squash and stretch X max, Y max, and the spring physical attributes. So I found it a little bit too nervous and too springy. So I can make it less elastic by decreasing this value. I will add a little bit more damping and play with the value of the squash and stretch X max and Y max to exaggerate the shape of the bulge effect and the resizing of the effect. So I will play with this value to make the effect more visible. So now what I've created is this kind of cool motion. As you can see, it's really cartoonish, really stylish, and it could be really useful for a wide variety of situations. If you don't want to make it bulge like this, you can just go to your layer and deactivate your squash and stretch bulge X and bulge Y effects. As you can see, you will end up with a really simple yet effective squash and stretch rescale resizing effect, which is already cool. So if you ask me, it's really something that add a lot of life to any keyframe motion basic graphics like this. Okay, that's it for the squash and stretch. As you can see, you can always choose another layer to inherit the motion from, but in the case of the squash and stretch deformer, I don't feel that it will be useful, so I won't show you that it works with another layer. Hope all that makes sense. So I will continue with other deformer. So the next one is called the Jiggle Deformer. If you do already know the Cinema 4D software, which is a really cool 3D software, you may have heard about the Jiggle Deformer inside Cinema 4D. Well, I've named this effect Jiggle because I really love Cinema 4D and I feel that it's doing almost the same kind of thing. But you would find that what is created by this deformer, if I alt-click on it, you will see appearing some summaries of how it works and what it does. Okay, it will deform your layers like a soft body object if you move it by keyframing the transform position. And keep in mind that the Jiggle Deformer, and that's what you see in the icon here, is working in conjunction with the Puppet tool of After Effects. So keep that in mind, and since you may have heard about other script that does the exact same thing, like let me think about it. So it's called Rubberized It, which is a really cool and powerful script that does almost the same thing. I will show you the few differences with it later, so don't worry about this. It's not an exact copy of Rubberize It, so don't worry, it will be useful as well. So I will close the information. Let's create a new composition. Create, like usual, as usual, a new solid like this. I will use the Puppet tool as I've told you before, so I will create 4 little puppet pins like this. Okay, and once you have created at least one puppet pin with the Puppet tool, you can now click on the Jiggle Deformer. Your layer has to be selected. So if I select this and click on Jiggle Deformer, it will open up a new message which prompts you to confirm by yes or no if you want to apply the jiggling effect, elastic effect, on all the pins that have been created. So in this case, it have written that I've created 4 puppet pins here. So if you do want to make all the pins jiggle, you can just click yes and you are all done. But if you have a lot of pins and you just want to have 1, 2, or 3 selected pins, you just click on no and it will prompt you to select only the pins you want and re-click a second time on the Jiggle Deformer. I will show you just after that how it works. So for now, I want my 4 puppet pins to be soft. I want them to be jiggling ones. So I will click yes, and as you can see, you have now in the red solid 5, same name than the initial layer, spring constraint control. You have always a spring constraint control. As usual, you have the elasticity, damping, etc., etc. But you have now some cool options for the jiggling puppet pins here. So the first option is a activate or deactivate the Jiggle Deformer. And as you can see, you find for each puppet pin that I've created here, okay, so keep in mind that the puppet effect has been renamed automatically by my tool. It has been renamed Jiggle, okay? By default it's a puppet, now it's called Jiggle. So I will click on it and I will show you how my puppet pins were called. As you can see, by default, the puppet pin is called puppet pin 1. By default, this is the first one that I've created. The second one is called puppet pin 2. The third one is called the puppet pin 3, and so on until the last puppet pin. As you can see, in my Spring Constraint control, it has created automatically a slider for each puppet pin with the exact name of each pin, which is really convenient if you have some complex rigs, for instance, with Duik that you may know for rigging characters, and that has been created by my friend Duduf, which is really cool and nice guy, and which offer its awesome Duik script for free, which is really awesome. So let's undo what I've created, and let's see what happens if I now, okay, I've undone this. I will recreate this. I will rename my puppet pins. To do so faster, I can type U on my keyboard and it will automatically opens up these puppet pins. I can rename them by the name I want. For instance, it's the top left corner, so I can rename it TL, for instance, for top and left. For the second, it's the top right corner, so I will rename it TR. Same for this one, it's the bottom left corner. Same for the bottom right corner here. And if you select your layer, click on the Jiggle Deformer, it will always prompt you to confirm if yes or no you want all your 4 puppet pins to act like jiggle ones. I want the 4 corners to be jiggling, so I will click on yes for the moment. And as you can see, now in my Spring Constraint control, that is always in sync with the name of my initial layer, I have the sliders that has been renamed correctly, and now I can find the TL pin jiggling max, TR pin jiggling max, BL pin, BR pin, etc., which is really convenient for complex rigs. So now that I've created this, all I have to do is, since all my pins are behaving the same way, I need to create a last. This is really important to make your layer act like a soft body. You have to create a very last puppet pin with the puppet tool. So I will create it around the center of my layer, and this one hasn't been calculated since I've created my Jiggle Deformer before creating it. So now this one won't be behaving like a jiggling pin. So this one will be stiff. So now that I've created all this, I can now play with the position. As you can see in the icon, it's just cross cursor here that shows that it works only with the position here. Okay, so keep in mind that the scale and the rotation won't work with this tool. Conversely to the rubberize it, which works better in these particular cases. So in my case, if I click on the position, so I will only animate my layer here, just play with the position, and you can already see what happens to the corners of my solid, which is pretty nice. Okay, so just by doing this, let's see what happens, and let's make a quick preview. Okay, pretty cool. So sure, it does exactly the same thing than rubberize it, which is another cool script, but now you can play with some cool controls here in the Spring Constraint control to make it way more customizable than with Rubberize It. So for instance, if you do not want your bottom corner in the left here to be as much flexible as the top one, I can go to the Spring Constraint control and tell my bottom left jiggling pin max to be less. So by default, they all have a value of 100. But if I click on the this one and I decrease it, let's see what happens. Okay, let's see what happens. And conversely, you can do it for other corners. So you can play with various with each pin to make each pin act like a different weighted soft one, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now I have this cool motion. So sorry for the little glitches on my screen, it's due to the recording. So it's pretty cool, and another cool feature is that you can now choose to not activate the jiggling effect during all the composition. So to do so, you can click on the stopwatch and enable or disable the checkbox right here. If you do so, let's see about here, if you deactivate this option, you will see that your jiggling pins won't be jiggling at all for now. So it's really cool, since you could want to not make your layer always flexible, always soft. You can decide, for instance, to make it flexible always right here, for instance. So I will click on this checkbox and click on off at this time. So now I have a basic motion which is stiff at the beginning and which is soft at the ending of my motion. This kind of thing isn't possible with a script like Rubberize It, which is really a good argument for my version of the jiggling pin tools. So that's almost it for the jiggling effect. I can now, last but not least, you don't have to inherit the motion from the layer itself. You could, for instance, decide that your jiggling pins act by the motion of another layer. Let's see what happens if I do so. For instance, I will create this one. I will cut my all my position keyframes of the red solid, and I will paste it on the blue solid. So now this is my blue solid that is moving, and my red solid with its jiggling pins is now centered in my composition. It is totally fixed. Okay, so I will just ensure that it's not animated in the activate option like this. Okay, so now it's activated, and I can now, in the Spring Constraint control, choose another layer than the initial red solid layer 1. I will do so choose the royal blue solid 2, and now, as you can see, which is really cool, is that you can deform your soft layer by the motion of another layer. This is the second big argument to show you that it's not the same thing than Rubberize It. If you analyze the expressions created in my tool, it's totally different. It's not the same algorithm of Rubberize It. So it's really another solution completely different from this other tool. So keep that in mind. Both have their strengths. So this is it for the Jiggle Deformer. There is one thing that I haven't shown you yet, which is what happens when you click on No when you click first on the Jiggle Deformer. As you've seen before, we had clicked on Yes, and all my jiggling pins were created. But if I want to use only one or several pins rather than the entire group of created pins, I will have to click on No. So to demonstrate this, I will simply import a nice where it is a nice jelly image which I've that I've basically created in Cinema 4D. I will mask it like this to make it have a bounding box customized and make it the rest transparent. So now that I've created this mask, I will click on the puppet tool, click on it, and I will first create all the sticking fixed pins. I want them to give the impressions that my jelly will stick to the ground. So be careful here. In some cases you could have this issue. So you have to play with the expansion here. By default, I think this is 0, so it's based entirely on my mask. So I will make all these pins not jiggled, so they will be fixed. So I will create now only the pins that I want to make jiggle. So I will create, for instance, one jiggling pin here, so I can do this. Keep in mind that so what happens here, it's rather bizarre, so just delete it and redo it. I think there was a problem with the puppet tool, so sorry for this. Okay, so I will create a bunch of pins that will be sticking to the ground. Okay, and another one here that I want to make, yes, this is it, jiggle the top of my jelly. So before we had clicked on the Jiggle Deformer while my jelly beauty is selected. Click on the Jiggle Deformer, and as usual this message appears. So it prompts you to click on yes if you want all your pins to behave like jiggling ones. As you can see, I've created 12 of them, and I don't want all these 12 pins to act like soft ones. I want just the one which is here to act like a jiggle one. So I will not click yes, I will for the moment click on no, and now this message opens up. It tells you that you have now to select only the one or the several pins that you want to act like jiggling ones. And don't forget then to click on the jiggle buttons just after that. Okay, so let's do it. I will click on my initial layer, which is this one. Retake your puppet pin tool and select only the one or the ones, see if you have several pins, that you want to behave like non-rigid ones. So this is this one for, in my case. I could, for instance, rename it if I want to, but I will leave it as it is, so puppet pin 12 in my case, since I've always only one puppet pin, and I will, since it's selected, re-click a second time on the Jiggle Deformer. and now it tells you how much puppet pins you have make jiggle. So I have created one jiggling pin, and now you find the corresponding slider in the spring constraint control like before. In my case, this is the puppet pin 12. So now I will just make a simple animation, which is basically a keyframe, a few keyframes on the positions, like this. Okay, really basic. And as you will see, as soon as I play the preview option, my jelly is deforming in a nice way. There was some problem caused by, it's maybe due to the expansion or the mesh that is overlapping onto itself here, for instance. Okay, so it will work way better if you correctly key or mask your parts in a much detailed way than I've created my mask. So it's not that bad. If you go to the spring constraint control, all you have to do is to play with the slider here and make it less, like this, less spring. By default, the value will always be 100, but as you can see, it's way too much in my case. So I will decrease this value until I have something that is nice, like this. And now, if I press play, I have this nice motion. Okay, pretty cool. So here it has again some problems, so I will try to reduce it a bit like this, and now it should work correctly. Okay, pretty cool, pretty nice. If you want to make it act like a real jelly, you can make it more springy just by increasing the elasticity a bit, like this, and reduce a bit the damping, like maybe it's too much, like this. Okay, pretty cool. So now you have understood how the Jiggle Deformer works in both yes or no option, okay, which is pretty cool. It's really useful in a lot of situations. Let's achieve to demonstrate what the Jiggle can do with another last concrete examples. I will import this time this nice textile picture, and I will try to create a nice curtain animation with the jiggling tool. So to do this, I will import this textile pattern. I will place it in a composition, and what I'm gonna do is to make a scale of my textile to give the illusion that the textile is wrapping onto itself. But if I only play with a scale, as you can see in the description here, or in the cursor shown in the icon, you can't use the scale to jiggle the pins. You have to play with the position. So let's say you want to make your curtain to be like this when it's fully opened. What I'm gonna do is to place the anchor point right here, and I will play with the scale first. So I've created just a basic animation like this. okay? But I want it to be in the other side, sorry. So I will play with the position, which is exactly what I need to be able to have some jiggling pins. So now that I have some keyframe motion on the position, it will correctly work with the jiggling deformer. So keep in mind that it's not the scale that will make jiggle the pins, but the position only. So I will just play the animation to see what happens. Okay, really boring for the moment. I will then click on the layer and create a bunch of puppet pins. I will make some top ones here perfectly rigid, so they won't be affected by the Jiggle Deformer. So I will just create a bunch of ones here that will jiggle with the movement of with the motion on the position. So as I said before, all I have to do now is to click a first time on the jiggle and to click no, since I don't want all the pins to jiggle. I just want to select myself which ones have to jiggle. So I will click no. It prompts me to select now some pins and to re-click the button again. So okay, that's what I will do right now. I will retrieve my layer, retrieve my puppet pin tool, and now I will click on this puppet pin, this one, and this one. This one, I want them to behave like non-rigid ones. But before to do this, I will type U on my keyboard and rename these ones. So this one will be my bottom left corner. This one will be the middle one, and this one will be the bottom right corner. So I forgot to make B like bottom, middle. Okay, hope it makes sense. So now that I've selected my three puppet pins and not the other ones, I will re-click a second time on the jiggle. And now it tells me that I've created 3 jiggling pins. Let's click on OK and see what happens now. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, so it's not that stiff here in the top part of my curtain, but you can always add more puppet pins here with other puppet pins like this to make it more stiff like this. So now, okay, it's pretty cool. It really behaves like a real curtain. So this is cool. I will just reduce a bit, or no, I will just make the composition a little bit bigger, like this, to help you see what my rig has done. So it's pretty cool, pretty nice. You have now a curtain that acts like a real one. You can play with the options in the Spring Constraint control. As you can see, you have a slider control for each puppet pins, which is here. I don't really like the way that the white behaves, so I will go to the bottom right pin and make it match like this. The middle one is a bit off, so I will play with it as well. And now I have something way better than before. I can even play with the springiness and the damping. If I increase a bit the damping, and decrease and increase, sorry, the elasticity, I can have a whole different simulation, which is pretty close to what happens in the reality. So it's pretty cool, pretty nice. Imagine that you have both sides of your curtain. You could do it simply by duplicate your animation like this. Okay, so it's really bad simulation, but you have the idea. I will make a symmetry. Okay, so something like this. And now you have your curtain, which is pretty cool. So that's all for the Jiggle Deformer. Hope it makes sense and that you have fully understood how all that works.